I want to warn you before I begin. What I'm about to share isn't one of those stories you can just listen to and forget. Because once you hear it, once you picture it, it stays with you. People say Blackwood Forest is dangerous because of the wolves, or the cliffs, or the winter storms that roll in faster than a heartbeat. But I know better. The real danger in Blackwood is him. The one who walks without leaving footprints. The one who whispers your name even when you're sure you're alone. The one who appears whenever blood betrays blood. And I learned about him the way many terrible truths are learned. By accident, alone, and in the dark. Let me start from the beginning, because to understand the curse of Blackwood Forest, you have to understand the man behind it. If you ever find yourself wandering the northern trail after sundown, you might hear it. A slow, dragging sound, like boots slipping on packed snow. Locals call it the frost footsteps, but the older ones, the ones whose hands shake when they say his name, they whisper another title, the betrayed hunter of Blackwood Forest. They say he died in the deepest winter on a night so cold the trees themselves cracked apart. And yet, when the snow falls just right, you can still see a human-shaped shadow moving between the pines, even though the ground beneath him stays untouched. I didn't believe any of it until I did. Until I saw him myself, just far enough to recognize the shape, but close enough to know he wasn't alive. And worse, he wasn't alone. But if I'm going to tell this properly, I need to take you back, far back, to the night he died. His name was Elias Thorncroft. People said he was the kind of hunter old ballads were written about. Steady hands, sharp instincts, and a quiet, patient nature that made even the wildest animals feel like they could trust him. His younger brother Corbin was the opposite. Loud, impulsive, always trying to prove something, and always chasing Elias's shadow. Their father, a stern man who'd been a hunter himself, used to say, "One day only one of you will inherit Blackwood Lodge. Earn it." And though Elias never fought for the title, Corbin clawed at every opportunity, but the forest chose favorites, and it didn't choose him. The tension simmered for years. Quiet arguments, forced celebrations, hunts that ended with Corbin storming off empty-handed while Elias returned with enough meat to feed the whole lodge. But the moment everything changed wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet night in late December, just after the first serious snowfall. A villager had gone missing near the northern ridge. Tracks leading into the woods, none coming out. Elias volunteered to search. Corbin insisted on joining him. And perhaps Elias should have said no. Perhaps the forest tried to warn him, because Blackwood is ancient. It remembers. The two brothers set out before dawn, lanterns in hand, the cold freezing their breath in midair. Elias moved through the trees with his usual calm. Corbin stomped behind, muttering under his breath the way he always did when his thoughts turned sour. "You always walk like you own the place," Corbin snapped. "I walk like I don't want to fall through a snowdrift," Elias replied gently. But Corbin wasn't listening. He was watching Elias's back, the way one watches a rival. Hours passed. The forest grew darker, colder, thicker. They found tracks, boot prints, but they were erratic, weaving between trees. The missing villager had been running from something or someone. They followed the prints deeper until they reached the frozen creek, the one locals avoided in winter because the ice could shatter from nothing more than a whisper of weight. The prints stopped at the edge. Corbin stared at the frozen surface. "You think he crossed?" "Looks like he tried," Elias murmured, feeling the brittle ice with the end of his bow. But before he could step away, there was a sudden crack. A tiny one, like a knuckle popping. Corbin had pushed him. Not hard. Not enough to look intentional. Just enough to send Elias's weight forward onto the thinnest part of the ice. It shattered beneath him with a deafening crack. Cold water swallowed him instantly. Corbin shouted his name. Too late, too dramatic. but not once did he step forward to help. Not once did he reach his hand out. And as Elias tumbled into darkness, his breath stolen, his limbs heavy with cold, he saw his brother's face above him. Not panicked, not horrified, but triumphant. Corbin returned alone, weeping, shivering, claiming Elias had fallen through the creek and couldn't be saved. The villagers mourned, but the forest did not. Days passed. The creek froze over again. But Elias's body was never found. His father died soon after, grief becoming the final weight on his tired heart. Corbin inherited Blackwood Lodge, but something changed the moment he stepped inside. The air grew colder, lanterns flickered, floorboards creaked when no one walked on them, and the snow outside the lodge always held two sets of footprints, Corbin's, and another set, perfectly parallel, that left no prints at all. It started small, a breath at the back of Corbin's neck when he was alone, a figure reflected in a window that disappeared when he turned around, lanterns going out one by one down the hall, as if someone were blowing down the flame. Then came the footsteps. It was slow, wet, and dragging. It was the sound of someone walking or stumbling through the halls. Corbin tried to tell himself it was the wind, but wind doesn't whisper your name. The wind doesn't know your secrets. Wind doesn't rattle the doorknob to your own bedroom in the middle of the night. Within weeks, Corbin had lost all color in his face, and within months, he wouldn't sleep unless every candle in the house burned through the night. And then came the night the villagers heard him screaming. They found him outside, barefoot in the snow, babbling words nobody could make sense of. He followed me. He followed me back. He knows. He knows. Corbin packed his belongings that same morning and left Blackwood Lodge without saying goodbye to a soul. And no one saw him for years. Now you might think this is where the story ends. Two brothers, one betrayal, one haunting, but that was only the beginning because Elias didn't just haunt Corbin, he haunted the bloodline. Every member of the Thorncroft family who betrayed another, whether through lies or greed or violence, disappeared or vanished the same way Elias did. People began reporting strange sightings in the forest, a man-shaped silhouette standing completely still between the trees, always watching, waiting. Some said he wore frost like clothing. Others said ice dripped from his fingertips. Some claimed he had no eyes, just hollow sockets filled with swirling snow, but one detail stayed the same. Where his footprints should have been, there was nothing. I wouldn't be telling you any of this if I hadn't seen him myself. I wasn't looking for ghosts. I wasn't looking for legends. I was looking for a story. I'm Mrs. Strange, after all. I seek out the tales that others whisper about, but never dare to explore. So when I heard the rumors, the missing hunters, the echoing footsteps, the shadowed figure, I went to Blackwood Forest myself. Maybe that was my first mistake. Maybe my real mistake was going alone. The forest was unsettling from the start. The kind of quiet that makes your ears strain for a sound that isn't there. Snow drifted in slow spirals, falling so gently that each flake looked like it was hanging in midair. As I stepped along the trail, I noticed something strange. My footprints were the only ones on the path, except they weren't. A few yards to my right, there was a perfect path of untouched snow. And yet every few seconds I heard it, crunch, 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 footsteps, walking in perfect rhythm with my own. I spoke aloud, something I rarely do in the field. If someone's there, come out. The footsteps stopped. Everything went still. I waited. Nothing. So I kept walking, telling myself it was just my imagination, but the forest doesn't care about what you tell yourself. It cares about the truth. I found Blackwood Lodge near dusk. It looked abandoned, windows frost-coated, door slightly ajar, a hollow quietness swallowing the porch. I stepped inside, dust thick in the air, furniture untouched for years, walls ice-cold, as though something inside was drinking up all the warmth. On the dining table lay an old journal, It was Corbin's. I shouldn't have read it, but curiosity is its own kind of curse. The entries were erratic, ink smudged, handwriting uneven. He's inside the walls. He stands outside my door every night. He knows what I did. He wants me to feel the cold he felt. The creak still whispers. I hear him breathing under the floorboards. Then the final entry, blood must balance blood. The page after that was ripped out, and then I heard it. It wasn't from outside, not even from far away, from directly behind me. Crunch. I turned slowly, very, very slowly. There, standing in the hallway, was a man-shaped figure. It wasn't a shadow and not a nightmare. A real silhouette, tall, rigid, coated in frost so thick it looked like shards of glass growing from his clothing. His head tilted. And I swear to you, I swear on everything I've ever known as real, the air around him dropped so fast, my breath turned to ice. I didn't move. He didn't move. Then he took a step. I looked down. No footprint, just that sound. Crunch. And then another. Crunch. My instincts screamed at me to run, but before I could move, someone else stepped into the hallway. At first I thought it was another ghost, but no, it was a man. Alive, exhausted looking, with the same sharp jawline Elias had in the old sketches I'd seen. He looked terrified. "Don't move," he whispered. "He follows the blood." I realized then, this was Corbin's son, a Thorncroft. "Why is he here?" I whispered. The man swallowed. "I betrayed my brother." Of course he did. Of course it always came back to that. The ghost form Elias took another slow step. I grabbed the younger Thorncroft's arm. "We need to go. Now." We ran, through the hall, down the porch steps, into the forest. Behind us, the footsteps followed. Slow, relentless, closer. We sprinted until my lungs burned, until my legs screamed. But the forest began to twist, trees shifting, paths merging, snow swirling so thick it blinded us. Then the younger Thorncroft gasped. "I see him! He's in front of us!" I didn't see anything, and then he vanished. 1 second he was running beside me, the next he was gone, swallowed by the forest, or something worse. And then the footsteps stopped. I stood alone, frozen, terrified, unable to breathe from the cold or the fear, and then behind me, just inches away, a whisper, a low, broken voice, like wind blowing across shattered ice. "Blood must balance. Blood." I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the road, until the snow gave way to asphalt, until the forest was nothing but a black silhouette behind me. People ask me why I tell these stories. It's not for fear, it's not for thrills, it's because stories like this are warnings. Blackwood Forest isn't dangerous because of wolves or cliffs or storms. It's dangerous because somewhere in those frozen trees still walks Elias Thorncroft, a man betrayed by his own blood, a man who never left the spot where his brother abandoned him, a man whose spirit freezes the ground he walks on without ever leaving a footprint. And if you hear his slow, dragging steps behind you, if you feel the cold steal your breath, if you sense something watching from between the pines, you'd better pray you haven't betrayed the ones you love, because he doesn't hunt the innocent. He hunts the guilty, and Blackwood Forest never, ever forgets.